Welcome to Sleep Story Channel, your gateway to peaceful sleep. Drift into a world of tranquility with our soothing bedtime stories, crafted to help you unwind, relax, and fall asleep effortlessly. Whether it's a gentle tale, a calming narrative, or a whispered lullaby, our stories will guide you into a deep and restful slumber. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let your mind wander into the realm of dreams. Sweet dreams and good night. The Midnight Legends, a 4-part journey into the realm of dreams. Part 1, The Echoing Woods. Deep in the northern valley, beyond rolling hills and moonlit streams, lay the Echoing Woods. It was a place few dared to enter, for it was said that those who wandered its paths would hear whispers, voices from another time, another world. Elias had spent most of his life chasing myths, recording folklore from the smallest of villages. But the tale of the Echoing Woods was different. It was whispered in hushed voices, as if merely speaking of it would awaken something. Some called it a forest of forgotten souls. Others believed it was a gateway to a land of endless dreams. Elias arrived at the edge of the woods, just as twilight painted the sky with streaks of purple and gold. The moment he stepped beneath the towering oaks, a hush settled over him. The air felt dense, charged with an unseen force. The first whisper came softly, like a breeze rustling through dry leaves. "Do you remember?" He turned, expecting to find someone, but there was no one there. The trees stretched endlessly in every direction, their trunks glowing faintly in the dimming light. With each step, the whispers grew clearer, but their words remained elusive, shifting like sand in his mind. Then he saw it, a glimmer between the trees, a doorway carved from the very fabric of night, pulsed with an eerie light. It was unlike anything Elias had ever seen. He hesitated. Something told him that stepping through would change him forever. And yet, the whispers called. Part 2, The Dreamkeeper's Hall. The sensation of crossing the threshold was like sinking into a warm, endless sea. Elias found himself in a vast hall, its ceiling high and adorned with stars. Floating lanterns drifted like fireflies, illuminating walls lined with thousands of doors. A figure stood in the center, a woman in flowing silver robes, her eyes deep as the cosmos. She regarded Elias with quiet curiosity. "A traveler of waking worlds," she murmured. "It has been long since one of your kind stepped beyond the Echoing Woods." Elias struggled for words. "Where am I?" "The Dreamkeeper's Hall, a place between sleep and memory. Here, dreams are woven, and the lost are guided home." His heart pounded. "And why am I here?" She smiled, but it was sad knowing. "Because you seek what you have forgotten." The words struck him like a wave, knocking loose something buried deep within his mind. Flashes of childhood dreams, distant laughter, and a face he couldn't quite place. The dreamkeeper gestured to the nearest door. "Step through, Elias, and remember." Part 3, The River of Lost Nights. Beyond the door was a river, its surface dark and shimmering, reflecting constellations Elias did not recognize. Small wooden boats drifted along its banks, each one carrying a sleeping figure. "What is this place?" he whispered. A voice, soft and wistful, answered him. "This is the River of Lost Nights. Every dream that was forgotten, every story that was left unfinished, flows through here." Elias turned to see a young girl, no older than 10, sitting at the water's edge. She held a lantern in her hands, its glow flickering with images, memories he couldn't quite grasp. "You were once a dream weaver," she said. "You shaped dreams, guided them, but you forgot. The waking world made you forget." He knelt beside her. "And how do I remember?" She pointed to the river. "You must find the dream that was yours." With a deep breath, Elias stepped into a boat, letting the river carry him into the unknown. Part 4. The Return to the Echoing Woods. The river led him through a land of shadows and light, of forgotten stories and whispers longing to be heard. Faces swirled in the water, fragments of dreams that had once been his. And then he saw it, the dream that had been waiting for him all along. It was a memory of childhood, of lying beneath the stars, imagining worlds beyond his own, of believing in magic, in whispers carried by the wind, of knowing, without a doubt, that dreams were as real as anything else. As he reached out, the dream wove itself back into him. A warmth spread through his chest, and suddenly, the river, the stars, the voices, all faded. Elias awoke in the echoing woods, the first rays of dawn filtering through the trees. The whispers were gone, replaced by a deep, peaceful silence. He had found what he had lost, and for the first time in years, he was finally home. He was finally... The next story. The Curious Case of the Sleepy Inn. The town of Willowmere was known for two things: its endless fields of lavender and the Sleepy Inn, a peculiar little establishment where, according to legend, no one had ever left without falling into the best sleep of their lives. Travelers who entered the inn, no matter how restless, anxious, or overworked, would wake up the next morning feeling as if they had slept for 100 years. Arthur Green was a journalist with a healthy dose of skepticism and a talent for debunking myths. He had exposed fraudulent ghost hunters, uncovered the secrets of so-called miracle cures, and written scathing articles about superstition. Naturally, when he heard about the Sleepy Inn, he knew he had to investigate. Upon arriving in Willowmere, the scent of lavender was everywhere, and the townspeople all bore the same relaxed expressions as if they had never known a sleepless night in their lives. The inn itself was modest, a charming two-story building with ivy crawling up its walls and a sign swinging gently in the evening breeze. Arthur stepped inside, expecting to find an ordinary reception desk, but instead he was greeted by an elderly woman knitting beside a glowing fireplace. She peered at him over her spectacles. "You must be Mr. Green," she said. "We've been expecting you." Arthur raised an eyebrow. "You have?" "Of course. Travelers always come when they need to, whether they know it or not." Before Arthur could respond, a bell rang softly. The woman gestured toward the staircase. "Your room is ready. I suggest you get some rest." Arthur had no intention of sleeping. He planned to investigate, take notes, and uncover whatever clever trick the inn was using to lull people into a deep sleep. But as he entered his room, something peculiar happened. The moment he sat on the bed, a wave of exhaustion crashed over him like a warm tide. His body felt heavier, his mind foggy, and then darkness. When he woke, the sun was high in the sky, and he felt different, refreshed, energized, almost suspiciously so, determined to find answers. Arthur spent the day interviewing guests, all of whom reported the same experience. They had never slept better in their lives, and they had no idea why. Some had come with chronic insomnia, others with stress that had kept them awake for years. But at the Sleepy Inn, they had all found perfect rest. As night fell, Arthur devised a plan. He would stay awake no matter what. He brewed a pot of strong coffee, set up his notebook, and prepared himself to resist whatever mysterious force was at play. He lasted exactly 6 minutes before his eyelids drooped, and he collapsed into sleep. When he awoke the next morning, frustration bubbled inside him. This was impossible. There had to be an explanation. That evening, Arthur confronted the elderly woman. "What is this place?" he demanded. "How do you make people sleep like that? Is it hypnosis? A gas leak? Some kind of experiment?" The woman chuckled. "Oh, nothing so complicated, dear. The inn simply gives people what they need. Sleep, peace, a rest so deep that even the noisiest of minds can finally be quiet." Arthur scoffed. "That's not an answer. There has to be a scientific reason." "There is." She gestured toward the fireplace. "But you won't find it with logic alone. You need to feel it, to trust it." Arthur hesitated. His logical mind rebelled, but a part of him, some deep, exhausted part, wanted to believe. That night, instead of fighting sleep, he let it take him, and for the first time in years, Arthur Green dreamed. The next morning, he packed his bags, wrote the kindest article of his career, and left the Sleepy Inn with a heart lighter than it had ever been. He never figured out the mystery, and somehow he was perfectly okay with that. Epilogue. The letter. Months after his visit to Willowmere, Arthur received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a handwritten note on parchment that smelled faintly of lavender. "Dear Mr. Green, some mysteries are best left unsolved. But in case you're still curious, come back when the moon is full. Sit by the fire, have a cup of tea, and maybe, just maybe, you'll find your answer. Sweet dreams." Arthur turned the letter over in his hands, considering. Then he chuckled, shaking his head. He had a feeling he'd be back. The next story. The Moonlit Voyage. The waves lapped gently against the shore, whispering secrets only the night could understand. A warm breeze carried the scent of salt and jasmine through the air as Elias stood at the edge of the wooden pier, gazing into the endless horizon. He had always been drawn to the sea, to the mystery it held beneath its shimmering surface. Tonight, however, the ocean seemed to be calling him in a way it never had before. Elias had spent years searching for something, though what, he could never quite define. It was an ache in his chest, a longing for adventure, for answers he didn't even know he sought. And so, when he discovered the old boat tied to the pier, its sails fluttering lazily in the moonlight, as if beckoning him aboard, he didn't hesitate. The boat, carved from dark oak and adorned with faded golden filigree, seemed to have been waiting just for him. As he stepped onto the deck, the ropes loosened on their own, and the boat drifted effortlessly into the open water. A strange but peaceful energy surrounded him, as if the night itself was guiding his journey. The moon cast a silver path across the waves, and Elias followed, letting the wind steer his course. Hours passed, or perhaps mere moments. It was impossible to tell. The ocean had a way of distorting time. Elias felt no fear, only a quiet exhilaration as the boat glided forward. Then, out of the mist, an island emerged. It was unlike any place Elias had ever seen. Towering crystal trees sparkled under the moonlight, their translucent branches swaying as if whispering to one another. The air hummed with a soft, melodic tune, as if the very island itself was singing. Drawn by an unseen force, Elias stepped onto the shore. The sand was cool beneath his feet, glowing faintly as if infused with stardust. A narrow path wove through the trees, leading toward a grand, ancient structure nestled in the heart of the island. The building was made of smooth, pale stone, its walls engraved with intricate constellations that seemed to shift and shimmer. As Elias approached, the great doors swung open, revealing a grand hall bathed in a soothing golden light. At the center of the room stood a woman, her long silver hair cascading like a waterfall of moonlight. She watched Elias with knowing eyes, a gentle smile on her lips. "You have been searching," she said, her voice like the rustling of leaves in the wind. Elias nodded, though he did not know what he had been searching for. The woman extended her hand, and in her palm rested a small, luminous stone. It pulsed gently, in rhythm with his own heartbeat. "This is your answer," she whispered. "A dream you have forgotten, a path you are meant to follow." As Elias reached for the stone, a warmth spread through his chest, filling the hollow ache he had carried for so long. A flood of memories, not from his past, but from possibilities yet to come, washed over him. A life of endless journeys, of stories written in the stars, of peace he had never known. The vision faded, and Elias found himself back on the boat, the island a distant shadow on the horizon. But he was no longer searching. He had found his answer, not in a destination, but in the journey itself. With a deep breath, Elias lay back on the deck, gazing up at the stars. The ocean rocked him gently, whispering lullabies only the night could hear. And as sleep embraced him, he smiled, knowing that his voyage had only just begun, The next story. The Silent Meadow. The village of Everlow lay nestled between two great rivers, a place where time seemed to drift like the gentle currents of water. It was a quiet town, where the days passed in a slow, golden haze, and the nights were filled with the sounds of rustling leaves and distant owl calls. Travelers who passed through spoke of a peculiar stillness in Everlow, a kind of peace that seeped into the bones and made the heart feel lighter. Amelia Whitmore had arrived in Everlow seeking rest. A writer by trade, she had spent years chasing deadlines, city noise, and the endless demands of modern life. Her doctor had told her she needed quiet, real, uninterrupted quiet, to settle her restless mind. And so, she had rented a small cottage on the outskirts of the village, where the wildflowers grew tall, and the breeze carried the scent of lavender and rain. Her first nights in Everlow were strange. The silence was not oppressive, but rather it felt like a living thing, wrapping around her like a soft blanket. There was no hum of distant traffic, no murmur of late-night conversations, only the wind sighing through the trees and the occasional hoot of an owl. One evening, as Amelia sat on her porch with a cup of chamomile tea, she noticed something unusual. The meadow before her, which had always seemed ordinary during the day, now shimmered under the moonlight. It was as if the grass and flowers swayed in rhythm with a melody she couldn't hear. The air felt thick with something unseen, something just beyond the reach of her understanding. She stepped off her porch, her bare feet sinking into the cool grass. As she walked deeper into the meadow, a strange sense of weightlessness overcame her. The stars above seemed closer, as if she could reach out and touch them. A gentle hum filled the air, not a sound exactly, but a vibration, a feeling that resonated deep within her chest. Then she saw them. Figures moved through the meadow, their forms light as mist, their movements slow and deliberate. They glowed faintly, their outlines shifting like candle flames in the breeze. Amelia should have felt afraid, but instead, she felt an overwhelming sense of calm. It was as if she had stepped into a dream, a place outside of time, where the worries of the world could not reach. One of the figures turned to her. Though its face was indistinct, she felt as though it was smiling. "You have come far," a voice whispered, though no lips moved. "And you have finally found what you seek." Amelia took a slow breath. "What is this place?" "The Silent Meadow," the voice replied. "A place between waking and dreaming. Only those who seek peace may enter." She felt the words settle in her heart. She had spent so many years running from expectations, from exhaustion, from herself. And yet, here, in this quiet place, she felt lighter than she had in years. The figures moved around her, their presence like a lullaby, soft and soothing. The hum in the air grew warmer, deeper, like a song without words, a melody meant to lull the restless into slumber. Amelia closed her eyes, and for the first time, in as long as she could remember, she let go. She awoke in her cottage, the morning light filtering through the lace curtains. The meadow outside looked the same as it always had, ordinary, untouched. But something inside her had changed. The restless energy that had followed her for years was gone. The world felt softer, as though she had been given permission to breathe. And though she never saw the glowing figures again, every night when she lay in bed, she could still hear the hum of the Silent Meadow, carrying her gently into sleep. The next story. The Eternal Night. In the quiet town of Eldermere, nestled between shadowed hills and the silver coast, the night had always lingered a little too long. The townspeople had learned to live with the darkness, adjusting their clocks and habits to its strange, unyielding rhythm. Every evening, the sky turned to ink, and the stars flickered like dying embers, casting eerie reflections on the cobblestone streets. At the heart of Eldermere stood the ancient Blackthorn Manor, an imposing estate with a storied past. It had been abandoned for decades, yet the townsfolk swore they saw candlelight flickering in its windows. It was said that the house was cursed, trapped in an endless loop of midnight, a place where time stood still. Nathaniel Ward, a historian with a penchant for the supernatural, arrived in Eldermere on a cold autumn evening. He had spent years chasing myths and legends, always hoping to uncover the truth hidden beneath the stories. When he heard whispers of the eternal night that clung to the town, he knew he had found his next mystery. The townsfolk were reluctant to speak of Blackthorn Manor, Some glanced away when Nathaniel inquired about it, while others murmured warnings under their breath. But curiosity was a powerful force, and it drew him toward the forbidden estate like a moth to a flame. On the first night, he stood before the manor's iron gates, rusted with age. The house loomed before him, shrouded in mist, its tall windows staring back like hollow eyes. With a deep breath, he pushed open the gate, the creaking echoing through the still air. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of dust and old parchment. Faded portraits lined the halls, their subjects' faces blurred with time. As he stepped further into the house, the grandfather clock in the main hall chimed, despite the fact that its hands had not moved in years. Then he heard it, a whisper, soft and fleeting, like wind through dry leaves. "Welcome, traveler." Nathaniel spun around, but the corridor was empty. His pulse quickened as he pressed on, his lantern casting flickering shadows against the walls. As he reached the grand library, he noticed something strange. The books were pristine, untouched by time. The dust that coated the rest of the house had not reached these shelves. A sudden movement caught his eye. A figure stood by the window, draped in dark robes. The figure turned, revealing a face half hidden in shadow. "You seek answers," the figure said, its voice neither male nor female. "But some doors once open can never be closed." Nathaniel's breath hitched. "Who are you?" "A guardian, a prisoner, a keeper of secrets." The figure's eyes glowed faintly, like embers in the dark. "You have stepped beyond time, Nathaniel Ward. You stand at the edge of the eternal night." A cold dread coiled around him. "What does that mean?" "The night here never ends," the figure murmured. "It stretches beyond the horizon, beyond the stars, and now it knows you." Nathaniel's mind raced. He had heard tales of places where time lost its grip, where reality unraveled, but he had never believed them, until now. He turned to flee, but the shadows had thickened, weaving around him like living tendrils. The whispering grew louder, overlapping voices, rising in a symphony of warning and lament. "You must leave before the 12th chime," the figure urged, "or you will never leave at all." Nathaniel bolted, his footsteps echoing through the corridors. The house seemed to shift around him, doors appearing where none had been before, hallways stretching impossibly long. The clock began to chime, slow and deliberate. 1. The walls trembled. The whispering grew frantic. 2. A shadow loomed ahead, its form stretching unnaturally tall. 3. Nathaniel's breath came in gasps as he sprinted toward the exit. 4. 5. 6. The house shuddered. The whispers turned into wails. 7. 8. 9. The front doors came into view, warped but tangible. 10. He lunged forward. 11. A cold hand grazed his shoulder. 12. Darkness swallowed him whole. When Nathaniel awoke, he was lying on the cold cobblestone outside Blackthorn Manor. The sky was a deep shade of purple, on the cusp of dawn. He could still hear the faintest whispers, lingering like an unfinished melody. He had escaped, but the night had marked him, and he knew, wherever he went, the eternal night would follow. The next story. The Whispering Fog. The village of Ravenshire was nestled between rolling hills, and a vast, endless forest. Few travelers ventured into its quiet streets, and even fewer dared to explore the thick fog that descended upon it every night. The fog had always been there, as far back as the oldest villagers could remember. It wasn't just mist, it whispered. No one knew when the whispers had started. Some claim it had always been part of the village's existence, while others believed it was the curse of an old sorcerer who once lived on the outskirts. Regardless of the origin, one fact remained unchanged. When the fog rolled in, the villagers locked their doors and whispered prayers. Nathaniel Gray was a writer searching for his next novel's inspiration. He had heard of Ravenshire from an old book and was drawn to its mystery. Upon arriving at the village inn, he noticed the unease in the innkeeper's eyes as she handed him the key. "You'll want to be inside before dark," she warned. "The fog is coming." Nathaniel dismissed it as local superstition. He had spent years chasing ghost stories, but he had never encountered anything truly unexplainable. That night, he left his window slightly open, waiting for the fog. He expected nothing but silence. But when the clock struck midnight, he heard it. The whispers. They were faint at first, like the wind rustling through leaves. Then they became voices, distinct yet incomprehensible. Nathaniel strained to listen, jotting down phrases that made no sense. He wanted to see the fog up close, to feel its presence. Against all warnings, he stepped outside. The air was thick, damp, and oddly warm. The fog swirled around his feet, shifting as though it had a mind of its own. The whispers grew louder. Suddenly, a shape formed in the mist. A tall figure, featureless except for glowing eyes. Nathaniel stumbled back, heart pounding. The figure didn't move, but the whispers turned to words, clear and chilling. "Leave while you can." He ran back inside, slamming the door shut. The whispers persisted until dawn, then faded as the sun rose. When he told the innkeeper, she shook her head. "You saw them." "Who are they?" Nathaniel demanded. "They were once like us," she said. "Curious, foolish. They stayed too long in the fog." Nathaniel should have left, but curiosity held him captive. The next night, he ventured deeper into the mist. The figures emerged again, their voices more insistent. "Turn back," they pleaded. "Do not become one of us." But Nathaniel couldn't turn back now. He pressed forward until he reached the heart of the fog, where time and space seemed to blur. Then he saw it, a doorway, ancient and pulsating with a dull light. Something beyond it whispered his name. A terrible realization struck him. This was why the fog whispered. It called to the curious, the unwary, the ones who thought they were different. The doorway was a trap, a prison for those who entered. Nathaniel turned to flee, but the fog had thickened. The figures reached out, their touch cold as ice. "We warned you," they murmured. With the last of his strength, Nathaniel broke free and ran. He burst into the village, gasping for breath. The villagers found him at dawn, collapsed outside the inn. When he woke, he could no longer hear the whispers, but the fog still came every night, searching for another soul to claim. And deep in the mist, the figures waited, whispering his name, whispering.